Thank you for doing this.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thanks.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Melnick, CEO of Sonicbids, and I'm joined today with Chris Pizzolo from Immediate Family Records, President and CEO of Immediate Family. Today we're going to talk about all things live music and music industry in general. So Chris here is a music industry veteran, and we're very blessed to have him today in this beautiful space in Brooklyn where we're currently at. And Chris, tell us about your whole journey in the music industry, the history behind how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like I started by being a musician. I started playing bass when I was 13. I got it as a birthday gift, my first bass. And the guy that taught me to play bass as I was a kid growing up wound up going on to play bass for a blues guitar player, a guy called Papa Chubby. And when I was in college, I was studying advertising and video. And so this is like forever ago. So like YouTube wasn't really a thing.
Where'd you go?
I went to Plattsburgh, SUNY Plattsburgh, which is like state school up north. It's like where you went if you didn't have good grades. So I went up there and I learned how to shoot videos, and I was really interested in advertising and really interested in like understanding like storytelling and media. And when I came back, the blues guitar player, Chubby, was like, you want to be the merch boy and come on the road? And I was like, sure. So I would go to festivals and sell t-shirts and just merch after the gig. And then when I graduated college, he was like, would you want to go on tour and I'll teach you how to tour manage? And I was like, definitely. And so he took me to Europe, the Midwest, like we drove through the States and went to Europe. And I would film videos of the performances, like kind of how we're doing now with this whole setup and like the Zoom recorders and all that. And I would post the videos on YouTube. And this is like early days YouTube. So he was getting a lot of views because there wasn't a lot of people making content and posting it in real time of live, like great live videos of regional blues guitar players. Mm-hmm. So it helped blow him up a little bit. And the label took notice of that. And then they said, hey, we want to poach your kid. And so he was like, look, you got the offer from this label. Would you want to go to them? And I said, definitely. That was a label called Mascot Records. So they did a lot of stuff with like Joe Bonamassa, Government Mule, like the guitar guys. It was like, that was like their world. Yeah. And because I was like a dork bass playing kid growing up, that was like my love language. So it was like Bootsy Collins was part of the label. I was like totally in love, and Warren Haynes and all those guys. It was like awesome. So from the label, I went to a management company and worked for a woman named Wendy Leister. Well, hold on, scrap that. I got fired from that company. And I want to talk about that.
Please.
That is
air your grievances.
It's no grievances. And that's the biggest part of my journey was like learning at a young age how to rebound from something like that. I don't think you're taught at a young age the trauma of losing a job or being fired or how to cope with that in terms of like so much of our identity as a culture is defined by what do you do and how do you do it.
Especially here.
Totally here. Yeah. And so with that experience, I had to like figure out what to do because like I didn't go to a good college. I didn't, come up and like I didn't intern in a big corporation like UMG or Warner. So I was just kind of like working for these entrepreneurs. And funny enough, like in that period, I was living next to a newspaper, the Queens Gazette. It was like the local penny saver newspaper in Queens. And I went there on a whim. I just walked there on like a Wednesday. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in writing about music. And I remember it so clear. I walked in, like where Jen's sitting, there's a girl sitting at the front desk. And she was like, what do you want? And I was like, yeah, I'm interested in writing about music. And she's like, hold on a second. She like picks up the phone. She's like, there's some guy here that wants to promote his band. And I was like, no, that's what I'm saying. And she's like, go upstairs. And I go upstairs and it's just like something like the Daily Planet from 1920, just some like old school newspaper thing. And there's a guy like the owner of the newspaper sitting in this messy desk office space. And he's like, so what do you want to do? You would do something about music? I was like, yeah, like I want to write about music. I want to do this and that. And he's like, what? And I was like, well, my grandmother used to read the Gazette. And I was like, but I don't read the Gazette. And I was like, and you're missing a lot of people. And he's like, interesting. He's like, it's so weird that you come in. He shuffles to the desk. He pulls out a piece of paper and it says wanted. Young millennial interested in PR and marketing to help bring the Gazette into the new age. And he's like, I just printed this today. And he's like, it's so weird that you came in. And I was like, yeah, it is. He's like, I can't pay you anything. And I said, I'll take it.
That's why you were wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I said, I'll take it. I said, can I sell ads? And he's like, you want to sell ads? I was like, sure, I'll try it. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay. So I went door to door selling ads for the newspaper for about 2 months. I didn't sell a single ad. And then one day he was like, okay, let me show you how it's done. And he's old, like the older guy, just old school, super old school. And he picks up the phone and he calls like a Greek restaurant. And he's like, hi, how you doing? It's Tony. I got this new magazine. It's hip, it's happening, it's sexy. I'm putting you down for 2 ads for the next 2 months. Pay it over time, it's no problem, bye. And hung up. And he's like, all right, we got 2 closed. And I was like, that's how you sell ads? And he's like, more or less. And I said, I can't do that, you know. And he was cool, and he gave me a job. We developed this magazine together, and did really well. And from that, I told that story to someone, and I said, you know, I got into making a blog at the same time. I know I'm like going in a million different directions at once, but basically what happened was I was doing this thing at the Gazette. So I was like selling ads, going door to door, and then my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife and mother of my child,
shout out to
Sarah.
Shout out to Sarah.
Shout out to Sarah.
Nice.
Sarah and I started a music blog called Play Too Much. And this is like when we probably would have been rolling in New York around the same time.
2000.
Like 13, 14?
Yes. Oh, you know, yeah, we were here.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So up until 2018 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we had started a music blog where we were shooting videos of artists, up and coming artists in the scene, like playing like all the venues like Pianos or, I don't know, Babies or whatever, like Bowery Electric.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we did was we went to our friends that worked at PR companies, and I said, because I had a little bit of experience, I said, whatever bands you have that are getting no press, send them to me. And I'll write articles, I'll film videos, I'll make cool shit of those bands. Because I know they're probably for real in the sense that like they're real musicians, they're recording in a real studio, they care. So why not give them love? Mm-hmm. And so I did it with this band, and it was a super group of side musicians that coincidentally happened to be managed by this woman named Wendy Laister, who managed Duran Duran.
Ah.
At the same time, and was a part of Matt and Kim's management, and formerly managed Aerosmith and worked with Queen. So I didn't know that, you know, and so I sent the video and I said, hey, here's these videos we shot. We're super excited about them. It's going to go on our blog. Plus we got another video of the band playing, and it's yours. Keep it. It's just yours forever. You can have it. And she's like, wow, you're a little angel. Like, you know, that's great. And then someone said, dude, do you know who that is? I said, I have no idea who that is. And then I looked her up. I immediately emailed her back. And I was like, dude, I just figured out who you are. Can I like hang out with you? And she said, yeah. And so that began my journey into like where I am now, because with Wendy, I was able to leave the newspaper, going door to door selling ads, and I was able to work, and she had been hired as a consultant to work for another company where they wanted her to do business development. She's crazy busy, so she didn't have time to. So she hired me to do it on her behalf. She introduced me to everybody. Like, you know, Nabil Ayers, Peter Shapiro, John Cohen from The Fader, like the people that formed my Mount Rushmore of the music industry. These were people that were entrepreneurial, successful, family-oriented, you know, like really, like to me, really, really paved the way of like, wow, this is what the industry could really look like. You know, there's filing cabinets, there's work being done. And that really excited me because I came from an entrepreneur father who had a bread business. So I didn't mind working. So anyway, so like the whole point being, I'd done that with Wendy, and then I got poached by a PR company who wanted to take our blog. And then Sarah and I sold the blog. And then after about 2 years, I started Immediate Family as like a social media marketing company. So we got hired by artists and labels to run Facebook and Instagram. And then over the last 7 years, it's developed into becoming this like label services company. It's almost like a 360 company. We can look over merch, product development, project management, social media, just kind of like we book tours. It's like every part of the music industry we have a touch point on. And that comes from my history and my background working with these people, the relationships I've been able to develop through someone like Wendy. You know, a friend of mine, Michael Weintraub, his photos are hanging up all over this office. That's been another huge accelerator for me in Nashville. I spend a lot of time in Nashville because I'm such a fan of like that guitar geek world of like the side guys. Like that's like where my love really is at. So like Michael is like the single most, you know, renowned guy for shooting photos of side guys. So him and I hit it off immediately, you know, and formed this great friendship. And so anyway, so over the last few years, I've just sort of like taken on all these different roles within this umbrella of Immediate Family, where we'll look over marketing for a label, we'll run project management for a label. And then during the pandemic, I started my own label putting out records, which is Immediate Family Records. And we've done a limited, you know, number of releases, but this one is sick. The Bicycle Thief, that's a reissue that we did. It's the first record I ever put out on vinyl. So I licensed a record paid a couple grand to license the record to the rights of the record, paid to manufacture the records. It was something that I loved as a kid growing up that never came out on vinyl, wasn't on Spotify. The artists were super excited about it, so they got behind it and helped us push it, and it was like a huge success. We sold out, immediately of those. Then that funded us being able to do a second project, and the second project funded the third project. The third project got nominated for a Latin Grammy. It was like, it has had we're in like a nice space right now. It's a nice groove of like being comfortable, because I've seen so much of that shit,
So do most of your clientele come directly from the labels, or do you work directly with artists equally? Or
it's the same. It's like, it can vary at any time. It's really like anyone that is trying to really kind of like advance their career, right? Like whether it be strategically through partnerships, like, okay, who are the brands or people that I need to connect with? Who are the influencers that I need to work with? Like we work with Kingfish this year. Probably one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. It was working with Kingfish and his team, Alligator Records. Shout out to Acceleration Music Group and Alligator and Kingfish and Rick. Like basically we got hired to run marketing for his live record, and they were like, come up with ideas. And we were like, okay, great. So why don't we have him in Times Square? Let's do a giant billboard in Times Square of him like just out there when the record drops. That'll be a nice look. So we did that, went awesome. Then it was his birthday. We got a birthday cake with the cover of the album on it, and just like all these fun little weird moments for social media that help blow up the awareness and impressions and visibility to the record. It's been so fun. Yeah, I forget why I bring that up. But
well, we're talking about your journey in general. It's interesting because like,
crazy.
I think when we first met, that was kind of the gist that I got, was that, you are not only embodying the current necessity for a music entrepreneur, but also the current necessity in the label world, where, the 360 is now probably saying 360 label outside of the big majors is unnecessary, because you need to be doing everything. And it's a music industry norm too. I mean, I've spoken to many colleagues in that same matter, where most people have 65 hats that they put on in every single day, and sometimes multiple gigs and sometimes multiple jobs. And what you're doing under that same umbrella is as many gigs and as many jobs that you can do under your own guys, which is great. I love that.
It's hard to tell that story too. It's like hard to explain to people what I do. People, like my parents are like, "What do you do again?" Like,
oh, none of our parents ever. I mean, you could show this to your parents, and they're going to be like,
they still won't understand. I still don't understand.
Yeah.
To be real, like, it's just kind of like there's an artist, there's a product, we kill it. You know what I mean? We come up with a way to help more people understand what it is, or create a success story around the product, whether it's getting nominated for a Grammy or getting on Billboard list or whatever that is. Like our goal is to help make that actually happen. And the first thing we do, if we're talking to someone in the business about, okay, what's your goal? What are you going after? Like I always ask, like, what's a win to you?
That's a very important thing. Defining success to everybody early
before we get started working together. Like, what's a win? What is it that you want? And like, there are many times where we can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I want 500,000 followers in the next 30 days. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. You know what I mean? For $800.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. But there are people maybe out there that can, and
inorganically, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So talk about. So I mean, you've spoken about so many projects that you're working on. Let's narrow it down. Give us 2 projects that you're currently working on. I'm sure they're the ones that are top of mind that you're most excited about right now.
Boy, that's so hard to do to someone that's working so many projects. So there's so many people that would get angry at me for not talking.
Oh, so then talk about more.
Yeah. All right. So
for all of them.
So here's the thing. I'll talk about.
You're going to be late to pick up your kid.
I'll just talk about something new that we're really excited about. And for me, that's managing a kids act. That's a new space in the music industry that I didn't know was there. Like super niche. I've worked with influencers, I've worked with musicians, I've worked with artists and labels, but I've never really like discovered an act and like helped bring them up. And that's something that I'm doing right now, where it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in music, because of how much joy it brings families. And like I have a small child, and like I joke this is my kid's first A&R, because like we found the artist through YouTube because my kid was watching it.
Yes, I've seen them as well.
Yeah. So it's just crazy that like
brush your teeth.
It's crazy.
That's right, 2 grown men.
Yeah. Some Raffi by way of Jules. Yeah. But like, like I was sick, and this is like how everything rolls for me, man. It's just all this kind of like intuitive, like whoa, wavy kind of thing. But like I had a big birthday party planned for my kid. We both got sick. We canceled the party. I was like, now what do I do for his birthday? And he loved the Miss Rachel YouTube series. He loved Jules. And I was like, let me see if like I could DM Jules and ask them if they'd make like a birthday video. And they wrote back and were like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know, like, would you down to pay like $50? I was like, of course, yeah, easy. So do the transaction. And then I get an email a couple days later saying like, hey, by the way, I checked out your website. I see what you're up to. On the low, I have a kids record and I love what you're up to. Would you want to work together? And so I was like, fuck yeah. But like, you know, if you follow that story about Jules specifically and what they've been through in the last 2 years from the media attention and their sort of like, personal journey that they've been on and how the media has looked at them, you have to understand that's like a really nuanced thing, right? You have like a non-binary trans kids artist that's like, yeah, that's a lot to swallow for, you know, just saying it in general, but it's a lot to swallow for families and media. And then you think about the artist's perspective, like what they're going through by being themselves and trying to provide joy. And so in this experience, we've booked a tour, we've put out music, we've connected with so many new people, and like the amount of smiles and like love that comes to these shows, it's crazy. It reminds me of being not a kid, but being like a teenager going to shows and just getting psyched to be first in line, and, you know, like to be there. Like this artist is getting people so excited about like just brushing your teeth, or like, you know, knowing that it's okay to cry, or feeling like you're in a crabby mood. It's so cool. And to work with all the big venues, it's like the bookers at certain venues that I've always wanted to get a hold of and I can't get a call return are hitting me up 3 times a day to ask about the Jewel show.
That's awesome.
You know, it's crazy. It's so crazy. And I think
venues are starting to realize how to, you know, utilize their spaces more than just the way they used to.
Comedy, you know, comedy is saving venues right now. It's crazy. It's like, you know, you have these comedians that come with a Shure SM58 microphone, no entourage, nothing. They drive a Toyota Corolla to the gig. It's like, you know what I mean? Like the overhead is so low. Yeah. It's crazy. You know, it helps the venues immensely because they don't need much. They're never, you know, I can't imagine like these venues at a loss too much for comedy versus music. You know, it's tricky. It's such a weird time. Yeah.
Wow. Love that.
Yeah.
So Chris, when you are working with artists, especially around their social media, right? When you're evaluating new acts that you're working with through labels as well, what are the KPIs or the exact metrics that you're looking for when you're looking into an artist and researching their high points and their low points and what needs to be worked on? So yeah, elaborate on that whole thing.
Yeah, it really varies. Like, because again, it goes back to like what their idea of a win is. You know, for us, if we're a label, there's certain things we want to see. Like, you know, they may have a couple thousand followers, or they may have a few hundred followers, but do they play out all the time? Are they playing live? You know, like, are there meaningful opportunities to help that artist grow? If it's someone where they're like, hey, we're trying to grow engagement, or hey, we're trying to get more followers, it's like, okay, like, how do you assess like what the benchmark is? What are we measuring against? So things like that we don't really use like a ton of technology to like determine things. There are certain things that like instinctually I can feel are red flags, right? Hundreds of thousands of followers, no comments, very little likes. Okay, this is a little sus.
Yep.
You know, tons of comments that are irrelevant. You know, commensurate followers and engagement, but the engagement doesn't make any sense. And it's, you know, or you would go then if you have massive numbers across the board, but you Google news search the artist and there's nothing there, you know, for years, then it's probably a sign that something's not happening with that artist, right? Like they're just little like sort of like, you know, is this person a part of the culture? You know, that's like a jumping off part. How do we get them to be a part of the culture? You know, who's their closest person in their network that's already in the culture? You know, most of these things have a similar diagram, right? It's like artist, money person, you know, people that they're tangentially connected to in their scene, with a venue that's a part of that sort of, you know, Venn diagram. There's all these players that are part of it. So it's like, okay, can we activate them? Can we really activate them? You know, that's like, artists might say like, hey, I'm friends with this guy and that guy, you know, it's like, but like, how good of friends are you? You know, like, are you good enough friends that they're going to throw you on stories? Or are you just telling me because you think that's going to make you more successful? You know, and so those are the things we consider when it comes to like artists or just sort of vetting their information. Spotify streams, same thing. Like there's a certain number of like monthly listeners or streams on a song that I would say translate to like followers on Instagram or TikTok, right? Like you might have relatively unknown artist that has maybe 1 million streams on a song, or 25 to 100,000 monthly listeners. I would say that person should probably be at like 5 to 15,000 followers.
Important metrics. Repeat that again, because this is what the kids at home want to know.
Yeah, so it's just understanding like the relative metrics to what you're doing. So like if you're at Spotify or Apple Music, mostly Spotify is what I look at. But if you're on Spotify and you're like, I don't know, 100,000 to 1 million streams and 25,000 to 100,000 monthly listeners, somewhere in that space, like, there's likely going to be at like, and again, I'm like changing the number slightly to be more conservative, but like, I don't know, 5,000 to 25,000 followers, something like that. Like there's just like there's a framework that all kind of checks out across the board. So that's what we look for on that side of it.
Do you ever go into a project and have suggestions around how an artist's social media should be built?
Yeah, socials 100%. We definitely weigh in on that. Art never. Like it's like a policy. Like if we're shooting content in a studio space, if we're in a creative setting, we've been hired to be there.
Yeah.
We do not give input unless asked.
Yeah.
It's so sacred what that artist is doing. Like they don't need my input.
No, for sure.
But when it comes to social decorating and branding and storytelling,
yes.
Absolutely, yes. With Steve Jordan, he's the drummer for the Rolling Stones and produced a ton of records from Betty LaVette to John Mayer and everything in between. Like, awesome guy and musician. He's put me in enough settings where I've been in a studio, been able to be a part of the creative experience, not say a word, and then tell the story for everyone else on social, and people feel connected to the storytelling of the project. And that's like super fulfilling, to be like, wow, like I can sort of retell my experience from a fan's perspective, but have the access that no one but the artist had.
So around those kinds of ideas, branding, social media presence, I mean, everything that you're talking about and all the services that you provide. If you're looking at it from an independent perspective, from an artist that's, maybe either just starting out or maybe they've been, hitting the pavement for years now and still trying to beat down the same doors and not having the successes that they want to, what would be like a checklist of things that you could recommend at a very high level for those people who may be listening?
All right, here's your Sonic Buds checklist.
Okay.
Right, so first thing you're gonna need is you're gonna need a website and social media profiles. I would say start at a basic level of any combination of the following: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X. Leave it there for now, right? That's a good place to jump off at. Now, pick 2 or 3 of those platforms, right? And get to know them. Don't worry about becoming famous. Just get to know how it works. Understand it's a tool. Like, get to know what kind of in-app editing they offer. Are there any affiliate apps that are next to it? Just spend, and I'm talking about like, I don't know, 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, like in your downtime, if you're in an Uber, if you're on the train, just play, right? That's number 1, right? Or if you're an artist at home, and you're working on like, what do I do next? Like, make some kind of vision board, right? So next step is get your website and social media down, make a plan, right? So something I love to use is something like ChatGPT, any kind of Gemini AI is cool. Like,
don't be afraid of the AI. Yes.
No, dude, the AI is so helpful. The AI is crucially helpful, and it's not here to take our lives from us or anything like that just yet. It's
not yet. Terminator
it's like at least a year or 2
away from Terminator. So for now, we should take advantage of the Terminator before it takes advantage of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Skynet, future problem.
That's Chris from a year from now. He has to worry about that. Right now, use it. No. But I would say my Sonic Buds checklist includes website, social media, then something like a link tree, I think is crucial for an artist to have. You're going to want to promote multiple things at any given time, right? An artist today, you have to be doing a couple of different things.
Or maybe like a Sonicbids EPK.
Well, tell me more about that.
The Sonicbids EPK has all the metrics and the links that I need, and press and videos and more today. I had to do it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, like, okay, so like, let's talk about that for a second. Like for us, like when it comes to like, there are a lot of like segmented things we use. So we'll use the social apps. Then for us as like a professional company that manages multiple people's social media, we have a third-party app that posts, right? So that could be like your Metricools, your Laters, your Sprout Socials, Buffer, all that kind of Hootsuite, like all those kind of like aggregate platforms where you can go on and schedule content, right? If you're an artist making your own thing, you gotta have a cool photo editing app. right? Get yourself like a Visco, Visual Supply Co. Get yourself just the iPhone, learn to use the iPhone camera better. Watch a couple of YouTube videos on just how to take dope photos on iPhone. You know what I mean? Like constantly have things ready for yourself. Get to know Canva. Like Canva.
Yeah, it's right there. Canva is,
like, get to know Canva.
This tech stack is important, gentlemen.
It is not like,
everyone.
Yeah, anyone that thinks like, oh, this is like, dude, Canva is everything right now. It helps artists. There are things that are like beyond Canva. There's the creative marketplace, right? Where you can go and buy Canva themes, templates, things to help you change your visual identity. If all these things are available to you and the top of the top independent artists and young hustlers that are coming up right now are using that day in and day out, you have to catch up. You have to catch up and you have to play with these things and learn them. There's no shame in learning it. There's no shame in not being good at it to start. Like, get to know it. That's part of the journey right now as an artist. You have to be able to manage your career and have someone that's smart enough to help you take it to the next place, right? So like, if I'm doing my Sonic Buds checklist and I have social media, website marketing, I have your platform built in, I have Canva, I have ChatGPT, and that should be a friend, a confidant. You know, your Sonic Buds checklist of things you need includes someone on your team that you trust. That could be a family member, it could be a close friend, and it doesn't have to be this like for show manager. Oh, this is my handler. It's like, you're not there yet. Just have someone you trust to just listen to you and give you positive affirmations and positive feedback. You know, like, hey, I'm working on this thing. It sounds cool. Don't give up. Keep going. That's enough to get an artist through, because if you're alone doing it in your bedroom, making music yourself, trying to tell your friends, trying to book a show and no one's going, like, you need someone to tell you keep going if you really care, you know, because you're gonna get burnt out, you're gonna get, you know, tired, you get frustrated, you know, it's tough, man. Another thing that I absolutely love is Song Tools. I think it's
shout out to Song Tools.
Shout out to Song Tools. Such an underrated platform, but it's coming up. It's one where you can do Spotify playlist pitching. So for anyone that's familiar with Submit Hub, it's pretty similar in the sense where it gives users the ability to log on, create a profile, submit your music. It goes out to playlisters, real people, not, you know, robots across the seas. They listen to your music, they review it, and they throw it in a playlist. After about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, it starts to learn. It's not machine learning. I think it's just like the curators learning like where it goes, and they start to put your music into playlists that fit. You're not talking about like, I'm gonna get 1 million streams from Song Tools, but you might get 10,000 or 20,000, and that really helps jumpstart your story.
It's services like Song Tools are an important thing for every musician to add to today's tech stack. And it seems that one of the overarching themes of your perspective of, which I agree with highly, of today's modern independent musician includes a lot of self-education. And I think that's a really important point that I think in a lot of conversations I've had, haven't really harped on it as specifically as a concept of self-education. To, you know, I think the mentality of play as many shows as you possibly can, that can easily just be replaced as play shows that are strategic to you, that you want to play, but also you have all this other time to continue to cultivate your own personal project through self-education, through understanding what your tech stack needs to be as a musician, and understanding how to use those tools. I think there's probably a loss of, and I love this point that you made, because there tends to probably be a loss of conceptual understanding of these platforms, of saying, oh, I'm on that. But actually, like you said, is learning those platforms and going deep and utilizing the intraweb for all the intraweb's amazing tools to actually be able to hop on YouTube and look at tutorials or look at, you know, things like this, educational content that'll help you understand why you're on that platform is key. I love that. And it's something that I'm psyched about. That's incredible.
I think performing live is super important too. Like finding a way to perform live. Like, is there a venue in your town? Like, you know, do you have a relationship there? Try and form one. You know what I mean? Like, go to shows. Like, just be a part. Like,
oh my God, yeah. So many kids don't go to shows that they want to be musicians. And you had it, like you mentioned earlier, are you part of that community? Right. And if you're not part of that community, getting to become part of that community becomes more and more difficult. There's a reason why successful musicians are friendly with successful musicians. They don't meet after they've made it. They meet and cultivate these relationships on their way up, which is, I mean, that's a historical truth. Yeah. I love that.
Every successful artist I've worked with has been the most humble, gracious, down to collaborate, give their time artist I've ever met. Like the highest level people, like, millions of followers packing, tens of thousands of people in the audience, like couldn't be nicer, couldn't be more chill to be around, like the best hang. And that's what you learn. It's like, calm down, like just take the time to perfect the craft. If that is the number one thing that matters, do you love it at your core? Because if you're selling it to someone else, how the fuck are they supposed to like it?
Yeah.
Like
I love this idea of the tech stack. I really, I'm hoping you can take a look at all the tech stack that we mentioned right here,
there,
here.
there.
Graphic to be inserted.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. We're sitting here with Chris Pizzolo, and we are speaking about everything music. And right now, so me and Chris are New York music industry people for a long time, meaning we're old and we live around New York and we know how to hit strings on a guitar.
Otherwise known as Sonic Buds.
So with that, tell me your, let's say, brief conception of the New York music industry, how it's changed over the time you've been here, your favorite players in the space, things that you saw that weren't ideal, and things that you see trending into the future in the New York scene.
Sure, yeah. New York music scene is great. I mean, there's a lot of really cool shit happening across the board, across every genre. I mean, there's like that Queens country thing that's happening right now, which is pretty cool. There's, these jam nights and all-star side guys coming to the bitter end and playing dope shows after hours. Brooklyn Bowl's got great weekend shows. Like, there's some cool stuff happening. In my opinion, we were for sure ravaged by the pandemic. The city doesn't look the same. The amount of clubs that are here are not the same. But the artistry is there. There's people making noise. Bushwick is still loud, and there's still bands coming through there, and that's hopeful. There's great young EDM acts playing in like unusual places, like the Merchants of Purple thing that's going on right now is really cool. Like, it's cool. It's happening. I wish there was a little more like cohesiveness amongst this, within the city and the industry.
It's very true.
I think I miss the days where there was 3 or 4 events or networking events or people that were curating those things where you could reliably go there, meet people, have fun, and build relationships. I think at the time we were coming up, there's a little more of that.
There was.
And we were a part of those, and so today it's a little less and it's harder, but the people that are still doing it today are the lifers.
I kind of feel like that post-pandemic, there's almost an opportunity here in a lot of ways for those of the tri-state area, that in this scene, and you mentioned compared to other cities, I think we're better off in a lot of ways when it comes to original independent music. But there still is a vacuum of organization for sure. And it's up to the up and coming generation, which is not me because I'm gray. And to create that community, because there is communities very much, like you mentioned, in all these different areas, but people who can bring together the art scene, I think are more important than ever to this particular market, for sure.
And it might be people you don't even realize, you know what I mean? Like, your local bodega might have 20,000 followers now on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, throw a show there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just think out of the box. Like, again, it goes back to like, be a part of the culture, be a part of the community, like, get to know your friends, make friends, ask for help. Like, there's no shame in asking for help. That's like the one thing that I feel like is like the most powerful lesson I've learned in my journey, is that there's no shame in asking for help. People are excited to help you. I remember like, I would be asking people like, yeah, I'm looking to do this. And people would say to me, this is like years ago when I was in my 20s, people would be like, talk to Dan Melnick at Sonicbids. I'll introduce you. And I'd be like, why are you going to introduce me? You're giving her contact? But like, you realize like it's about the culture, it's about the community. I love being competitive. I love it. I love it. But at the end of the day, I also love people. You know what I mean? So it never goes across that line. It's always like, okay, like how do we make it bigger? How do we make it better always? And then like, that's at the core of it. So I hope that there's more of that in the city. Over the coming years. I hope that people understand that like, it's okay to lean on each other. It's okay to fuck up. It's so good to fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, make mistakes, try again. You know what I mean? Like, that's really how you learn. It's not like,
It's a good part about the music industry in general, even outside of New York, is that there's enough to go around, but there's not enough organization to bring that together. And, the players in the space they create their own momentum. They don't need to leech off of someone else's.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And being friends and being close to people that fit you and your vision and the way that you approach things, I think is important.
Yeah.
And without toxicity, which is good, because there's good people in every city. There's good people that aren't out there for the quick buck, right?
Totally.
Yeah. There's definitely room for positivity in the space, and I think that I think we are lucky enough here to even have this conversation. And I feel like there's a lot of people that we're going to continue to have these conversations with as well. So with even in the New York scene and outside the New York scene, what publications or things or blogs or whatever how do you stay on top of the scene? Where do you look for that?
Yeah, so for me, I'm like super concentrated in the Americana, jam band, folk, American root scene. So that encompasses blues, jazz, bluegrass, country, Americana, rock. So for me, like Relics is like that one sort of like catch-all organization outlet. What Peter Shapiro has done building an empire has been something I've looked up to for years and have been always super impressed by. But
the chicken is great there too.
The chicken at Brooklyn Bowl is fantastic,
chicken, yes.
Dude. That's Blue Ribbon Barbecue, I believe. But yeah, for me, I would say Relics is a big one for us in our space. Like being smart about understanding the difference between organic pickup and advertising pickup, understanding the difference between paid media and earned media, meaning, okay, you're pitching to their writers to get a blog placement versus maybe it makes sense to spend $500 on ads in their newsletter because it's going out hundreds of thousands of people that are targeted for you.
Yeah.
Things like Bands in Town, back to the tech stack. Is that okay for me to talk about Bands in Town? Is that direct?
Not a competitor of ours whatsoever.
Okay, cool.
Like I said, more room plus actually literally by business model, we're fine.
Okay, cool.
Actually, hi Fabrice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no. But things so for me, Relics is a big one. We advertise a lot on Bands in Town. Just finding places where we know that a similar audience is. And then I love influencer plays. That is really where I spend a lot of my time. We did a really cool thing. I'll wrap this up in a second, but you'd asked about some things that I'm up to. That Kingfish campaign we did, I was talking about earlier. We worked with a guy called Marty Schwartz, who is the internet's biggest guitar teacher. So Marty's amassed millions of followers by teaching. If you ever look up how to play any song, you'll see him on YouTube. He's wearing this cool hat. It's hey, Marty Schwartz here, and it's amazing, dude. He's the best. And so we did a collab with Kingfish and him, just an interview like this. It was over 10 million views on that. You know what I mean? Where are you going to generate that kind of impression for, just hitting someone up and saying hey, you down to have a conversation with another person? It's understanding where those opportunities are is so important. So back to the media outlets. It's Relics, it's influencers, it's something like Bands in Town for us, or Song Tools. Just all those things are super helpful.
The tech stack, understanding it is very important.
Yeah.
Yes. So make sure we see that graphic one more time. There it is. Graphic here. I'm going to hold the graphic in my hand and the camera, hopefully. It doesn't fall over.
It's great motion tracking.
Yeah.
As well. One other thing too, it's you and I are talking about the tech stack, and that's after the art's made. Think about from the artist's perspective of understanding the tech stack for your DAW for recording the music, or what plugins you're going to use to get the mastering compressor to sound right.
That's true.
When you're making it. Then the fucking tech stack for making your music video, because you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And understanding that you might need this iPhone thing or an adapter for your camera. It's crazy.
And I feel it might, even listening to this conversation, for those who've made it this long, probably are listen, this is a lot, dude. This isn't my full-time job, right?
Yeah.
I have my full-time job, whatever it may be. A lot of people, look, we've been there. I cut my teeth in, the service industry too when I was coming up. But, what we're talking about here, and Chris said it earlier, was just literally put it on your calendar, 15 minutes on Instagram, right? Set yourself your reminders, get organized with your time, make strategic, positive decisions with your calendar based on things. Don't, you could say yes to everything and then organize it correctly. It doesn't mean that you have to do the things, but organizing and balancing your play schedule to your self-promotional schedule is more important today than it has ever been. You don't need the label to get you out to people sometimes. You can get yourself out to people sometimes, or come to Immediate Family Records. today. Okay.
We have a helicopter waiting for you.
Yeah, the helicopter.
Yeah.
They're after me.
Yeah.
I have to go. All right. Well, Chris.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, and thank you for having us in your beautiful office.
Yeah, thank you to our sponsors.
Yes, and thank you for our sponsors, all of you.